Alright, it's time for another update and forecast for the park fire. I think we'll just start off with this map and give like a brief summary of what's going to be going on for the park fire throughout the day today, over the next couple of days, and then we'll really dive into the details. First thing I'll say is that when you look at this map, where you see the red, that's where there's been a lot of heat coming off of the fire recently. So we did see an increase in activity yesterday compared to previous days. Saturday to Wednesday actually wasn't too bad on the park fire. They're able to get some great work done there. And it is good that they were able to do that work because now it's heating up, it's drying out, and then we have the chance for some thunderstorms over the next couple of days. But I will say the northern, western, southern sides of this fire are looking great. It's really this northeastern section that we're going to be focusing on today. So with that being said, let's kind of get our bearings around the fire just in case you're kind of not familiar with where this fire is. We have Chico down to the south that actually started in Chico. We had strong southerly winds almost all of last week, which quickly pushed this fire up about 40 miles towards the north. Most of the growth on this fire was Tuesday through Thursday last week. So as we were still in July, it's August 2nd now. And then, so we have Chico there. We have Paradise to the southeast, Magalia. We have Forest Ranch. Situations looking a lot better there than it was in previous days. We have Butte Meadows on the east, Red Bluff to the west, Manton and Shingletown to the north, and then one spot that we're most likely going to be talking about today is Mineral up to the northeast, because that's where we have kind of the largest amount of structures to the northeast of the fire. And the reason that's important is because that's where the heat has been recently. And then when we look at the winds this afternoon, once again, they're going to be coming from the southwest. There is a bit of a wild card for the winds, though, because we may have thunderstorms coming through. And when that happens, you can get very gusty, erratic winds, which can push the fire in all sorts of different directions. So before we get into the weather forecast, we'll end on that since that's kind of looking into the future. But we'll start by kind of looking into the past. So what has happened on it recently? Well, acreage-wise, it's up to 397,000 acres. We could call that 398. So if we look at that in terms of progression, this is where it paints the picture that Saturday to even, although it picked up yesterday, I mean, I actually did record the satellite imagery from yesterday. Let's take a quick look at this. You'll notice the smoke coming off of that northeastern side, and then towards the afternoon, see that big plume coming up right there. That's the most activity I'd say we've seen since last Friday. But you notice the northern, western, and whole southern edge of the fire, basically nothing going on around there. It's all that northeastern edge, but certainly a lot of smoke coming up yesterday afternoon. So coming back here, this shows the progression of the fire. Blue, green, purple, that's going to be that growth that we had last week, which is, as you can see, the majority of the fire. And then red, orange, yellow, that's going to be where some of the more recent growth has been. I mean, depending on your eyesight, you could probably barely see that, although you do see more of that red showing up on the perimeter, which is the growth from yesterday. And I actually believe this map is incomplete. I think I have more recent data on Google Earth right here, so hopefully my Google Earth's going to be working for us throughout the day today. Again, just looking here, we have Butte Meadows down here. Notice if I click on and off, you can see where the growth was yesterday. So what I try to do is I look at the perimeter, and then when I click it on and off, I try to see where that perimeter changes. Notice on the western, a lot of the eastern part of that fire, no change. It's really just this section right here. So if we zoom in, we've got Deer Creek down here, Mill Creek right here. And Mill Creek has been a challenging place for them recently because what's been happening, it's been good that our winds have been calm recently. That's a big part of the reason that the fire activity and the growth has calmed down since last Friday. But when you get calmer winds, it doesn't blow the smoke out as much. So then what's been happening is that smoke has been settling in the valleys. And actually, if we look at it right now, and it's actually kind of hard to see because we have so much of those mid to high level clouds coming through now. That's a little indication of the moisture that could be bringing some thunderstorms. Friday, Saturday afternoon. So this afternoon and Saturday afternoon. Looks like more so Saturday though. So we have Mill Creek in here. That's a spot where we have seen some growth. In canyons, you can typically get kind of gustier winds than other parts of the fire. So even though our winds the last few days have been around 10 to 15 miles per hour, in a canyon, you can get windier conditions. But we haven't... The reason this canyon has been challenging is because the winds have actually been calm the last few days. So then instead of the wind blowing all the smoke out of the park fire, it's been settling in the canyon. So then they're not able to get crews in there because they can't see where the fire is. They're also not able to use like air operations or helicopters because the visibility is too low. So that's one challenge when you have a lot of smoke. But then as we're going to see the smoke most likely clear out a bit more today, has its own challenges because then it heats up more and then it ends up being a little bit windier in your canyons because you get that temperature contrast between the valley and the canyon walls. But just, again, zooming in here now, that's where the growth was yesterday. So that was the most active part of the fire. Few things I'm thinking. Yeah, it's certainly more growth than we had in previous days, but it's not even close to as much growth as we had last week. So in that aspect, it is good. And again, it's Deer Creek right here, pushing up to this ridge, which I believe is called the Deer Creek Plateau, and then Mill Creek right there. Manton is going to be up towards the north. So I'm just going to close out of Google Earth there, just in case that's making the live stream go slow. And I think that basically sums up where the growth was yesterday. Just putting the entire fire in context at this point. So this chart is actually old because if we look at it, it's basically up to 398,000 acres now. So it is officially the fourth largest wildfire in California history. And the other thing that isn't updated on this chart is the structures destroyed. And unfortunately, that is a number that we've seen go up recently. It's up to 47 damaged structures and 537 structures destroyed. So that is actually a pretty big jump from what we've seen in previous days. A key thing I want to emphasize, though, and I've actually seen this kind of reported incorrectly other places, but that huge jump in structures isn't because we had a bunch of new structures destroyed yesterday. Most of that is actually going to be Tuesday to Friday last week. And something new on this map that you can see is that... So I put the CAL FIRE link in the description of this video, so you'll be able to find this map. But I've been waiting for this map for about a week, but they now have the damage assessment map. So how this works, need to drink some water. Been doing a lot of talking this last week. Park Fire has been quite something, as we can see. It's fourth largest wildfire in the history of California. So how this map works, black is going to be no damage, yellow is going to be minor damage, orange is major damage, and then red is destroyed. So one of the key places that we were kind of worried about on this fire is Cohasset, because when you look at the fire perimeter and then we turn on structures here, structures are going to be these orange dots. The community of Cohasset is within the perimeter. Now, there is that one unburned island where, as you'll see on the damage assessment map, a lot of those structures survived, but before this damage assessment map came out, we didn't really know what had happened to the rest of these structures within the perimeter. So how this works is when you come in here, you can actually click down by like a street by street level. It has all the different structures on here, and then you can actually click on a structure and then it shows the picture. So right there, you just see that house is completely gone. And then if you look at, so red is going to be where it's destroyed, black is where it's no damage. So we look at that one, and it looks like the structure is still intact. So I'm not going to click through all of this. Again, the link for this is in the description, and I'd imagine that's probably something you want to just do yourself. Because, I mean, I lived in the Santa Cruz Mountains when The CZU lightning complex was to the west of me. The SCU lightning complex was to the east of me. So that's actually how I got into wildfire forecasting. Was I was trying to figure out what was going on the wildfire. I was living at the top of a box canyon with like limited service, so I was thinking, okay, this is pretty dangerous. Is the fire coming near me? Like, there's ash falling on the cabin that I'm staying in. Like, do I need to evacuate? Like, what's going on? And I couldn't really find any useful information online, so then I found basically all the different links that we're going to be looking at throughout the course of the day today. Figured out that the fire was actually moving away from me, so I didn't need to evacuate. But then once I acquired that information, I thought, okay, there's probably a lot of people who have the same kind of problem as me, where fear is the unknown. They don't know what's going on the fire, which direction it's going. And that was how I got started doing these videos. But kind of the point of that little story is those fires didn't actually end up, I didn't lose anything in those fires. So when I talk about the structures destroyed, again, just to be honest, I don't know what that must feel like, but all I can say is just sorry to everybody who has been impacted by this fire, especially as we've seen this number continue to tick up. So that's the damage assessment map. And then we can also, actually, since that was kind of, I usually try to keep these videos as positive as I can, let's go up to some of the other numbers that we have on this fire, which are actually encouraging. Over 6,000 personnel, 41 helicopters, over 500 engines, over 100 crews. New crews have been coming in from Utah, from Texas, from the National Guard. And that's the most resources I've ever seen on a fire. So as our wildfire forecast gets a lot more challenging over the next few days, part of the good news is that we have all these resources to help us through that challenging time. But I would say the even better news is we had that break in the weather from Saturday to, I'd say yesterday looked pretty challenging, but Saturday to Wednesday, they were able to get a lot of great work done, and we can actually see some of the work that they got done on this map. That's slowly going to pop up right here. And it's just great that we had that brief period where the winds calmed down a lot. We had some more moisture move in, some cooler air move in, because that allowed them to prepare for the weather that is coming over the next few days. So just looking at this map right here, anywhere where you see the red perimeter, that's where it's uncontained. The black perimeter is where it is contained. So northeastern section, that's clearly the priority at this point, because when we look at this map, right here, live stream starting to go a bit slow. When we look at this map, I'm not really even going to be talking much about Chico, Red Bluff, even Manton and Shingletown in this video, or even Forest Ranch, just because we haven't had any heat on that part of the fire recently. So it's really this northeastern section that I want to focus in on. So looking in here, that's the area we were looking at on Google Earth earlier around Deer Creek and Mill Creek, where we had the largest amount of growth yesterday. And then looking in there, anywhere where you see the black X's, that's going to be where we have dozer lines. Anywhere where you see the pink X's, that's where they have some planned dozer lines. So the last we looked on that Google Earth, it did look like it had gone up to this ridge. And what I notice is in here, it's very difficult terrain, all kinds of different challenges, but you're not seeing a lot of those dozer lines in there. Now, with that being said, we do have dozer lines around, let's say, Mineral up here. We can actually look at that again. Zooming into the northeast, I'd say the main structures I'm concerned about in this area would be Mineral. That's the largest amount of those orange dots that you see up there. We do still have some distance between where we've had a lot of that heat activity recently in Mineral. That's about 8 miles. So that's a pretty good amount of space, especially considering our sustained winds throughout the day today still aren't going to be as strong as they were last week, and that's really what allowed it to push through, or push as quickly as it did last week when it was burning 10 to 15 miles in a single day. One thing I will say, though, that's a challenge for this area, not only the fact that it's been difficult to, it looks like, get dozer lines in here or anything like that, is we also have a lot of dry abundant fuels that haven't burned out in a very long time. So looking at the fire history, can see there's some fires around here, but no fires between where we have the heat right now and where we have mineral. So that's going to be a lot of fuel that hasn't burnt out in a very long time. And then we've also, I believe July was officially the hottest July on record. I think Sacramento averaged over 100 degrees for the first time ever for the month of July. And they beat the previous record by 2 degrees. Usually you only beat records by like a few tenths of a degree. So July was exceptionally warm. So not only are there abundant fuels that haven't burned in a long time, but they're also about as dry as you're ever going to see them, or as dry as those fuels have maybe ever been. Maybe not so much the larger fuels though, because we did have a decent winter and it takes longer to lose that moisture, but the finer fuels are certainly as dry as it gets right now. So heat down there, dry abundant fuels, mineral up there. On top of that, we have the southwesterly winds that are going to be trying to push the fire up towards the northeast throughout the day today. So just the basic snapshot, that's where I'm expecting the growth throughout the day today. On this entire fire, that's almost 400,000 acres. Most of the growth today is going to be right there. The question mark is how much growth we end up getting, and the larger question mark is if the thunderstorms come through, lead to gusty erratic winds, and then throw some spots, or even with the hotter conditions, if we flare up somewhere else. I'm not as worried about that though, because in a lot of the other parts of the fire, they've just been like mopping up the heat over the last few days. So the point I want to make there though is, although I just said a lot of things that are working against us, if you're thinking about mineral up here, they've had plenty of time to prepare this area well. So we not only have 8 miles still of distance between where we've seen the heat and mineral, but if you look at mineral, they already have dozer lines around it. And then they also will, I'm thinking, be able to use air operations a bit more today, because the smoke should be clearing out a bit more than in previous days. That's always the hardest thing to forecast though, is what's going to happen with the smoke. But just looking at it right now, you can see there's more of that mid to high level moisture out there. So maybe now would be a good time to get into the weather forecast. One of the best things to do when starting a weather forecast is just looking at what it looks like right now. So right now, looks like we have some mid to high level clouds moving overhead. You would hope that that would keep us cooler, but it actually looks like today is going to be warmer than in previous days. And then if we actually want to look at a camera on the ground, so this is the Colby Mountain camera. You're going to have Deer Creek Highway right there, Mill Creek up here, and then the camera is going to be looking up towards the north. So imagine that's just kind of estimating here because it's hard to tell without the fire perimeter on this map, but that's mostly likely where we've seen that new growth and that activity yesterday. And if we actually want to look at it, this is over the last hour. I would say that is looking more active than in previous days, and actually more recently, you notice at the beginning of this video, it looks like it's just kind of hugging the ground, and then you start to see that smoke move in higher up, which tells us that to the west of to the left of this camera, there would be more heat activity, which would lead to like a larger smoke plume, and then that smoke comes in at a higher level. So definitely looks like the fire is more active right now. Looking at the weather stations that are actually on the ground, it looks like the winds are still pretty calm for the most part. I don't know what that station's doing. That one shows 15, but all the other ones show around 5 miles per hour. And then temperatures look to be a mix between the 60s and 70s at the moment, but temperatures are one thing that is going to be going up today. So that's one factor. Temperature, humidity, I'd say both of those kind of working against us today. And then also the thunderstorm potential. Now, as I've said in the past, thunderstorms can kind of be a mixed bag. You never really know if it's going to bring beneficial rain. I've seen a number of fires where it's been a prediction for thunderstorms and we're all scared because gusty erratic winds and lightning starting new fires, and then it actually drops rain on the fire and then we're good. But I've also seen it where it leads to gusty erratic winds and lightning and it ends up being very bad for the fire. So just looking at what's creating the weather forecast today, it's this big high that's building in over the west. And anybody who's been watching my videos over the last couple of days has probably heard me say this a couple of times, but I'm just going to say it again because it is a pretty good visual right here. So this high that's building over the west has clockwise rotation, and then that's going to take moisture down that was over Arizona, and it's going to push it into California Friday, so today and Saturday. So what that's going to look like on the water vapor imagery, looks like it's already starting to move into Southern California, and then it's going to continue to move in through the rest of the state. And we've already seen some of that increase in moisture with those mid to high level clouds that are showing up. So as the moisture moves in, it has the potential to, again, create some thunderstorms. But before we get into the thunderstorms, because I kind of want to end on that because that's the biggest question mark in the forecast, I picked a spot as close as I could to Mill Creek. That's most likely where we're going to see some of the growth throughout the day today. Shows temperature back into the triple digits. So that's the hottest we've been in a while. It's been a steady increase in temperature over the last few days. As things get warmer, things typically get drier at the surface. So looking at the relative humidity, it's dropping back into the teens. If this map is a little, or this chart's a little confusing, basically this left column's today, that dark shaded column's tonight, that's tomorrow, and then that's tomorrow night. So today, triple digit temperatures, relative humidity, the driest we've seen in quite some time, back around 15 to 20%. I don't really trust this map for the wind speed, but wind direction, it's pretty good. Looks like it's showing from the southwest once again today, which goes along with what we were seeing on this map. That southwesterly wind will try to push this fire up towards the northeast. And then you've probably been looking at these bottom two charts because these are new charts because I don't often show these because there's often nothing to show. But right there, it's showing the potential for some rain from about 5 p.m. this afternoon through maybe 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. So right there, the hardest thing to do in this forecast with the moisture moving in is it going to bring beneficial rain? Is it going to bring gusty winds and lightning? Well, based on this chart, it's not showing any potential for thunder in the station that I clicked near Mill Creek, but it is showing the potential for rain. So right there, we might think, okay, that's maybe some good news. But then, obviously, one thing you do as a meteorologist is you check all sorts of different models, all sorts of different sources. And this is where maybe the forecast looks a bit more challenging, is when we look at the thunderstorm forecast itself. So as we get into this afternoon, this model has most of the thunderstorm activity down in Southern California throughout the day today. And then, interestingly, it's showing that one little cell right over the fire as we get into tonight. So some potential tonight. It's interesting. It looks almost like a outlier right there. I would say when it comes to thunderstorms, the part of the forecast I'm the most worried about is Saturday afternoon. And that is why. So that's showing around 3 to 5 p.m. Saturday. I've picked this marker close to Mill Creek, and it's showing decent thunderstorm potential actually over more the northern half of the fire, which is where some of our heat has been recently. So the thunderstorm forecast has been changing a lot over the last couple of days. Originally, it looked like everything was going to be to the east of us. Now it looks like we actually could get some thunderstorms over the fire. And obviously, the danger with thunderstorms, this actually shows lightning flash density. And this goes into Saturday at 5 p.m., which matches up with that right there. And it is showing the potential for some lightning near the fire. Now, that's also why this high is so important, because just because you have lightning doesn't mean a fire is going to start. I believe actually the majority of lightning strikes that touch the ground don't start a fire. But it becomes more likely the drier your fuels are. So as this high has built in and strengthened, it's taken our below average conditions. When we were looking at this map at the beginning of the week, all of California was in the blue. So we had below average temperatures. Now it looks like as that high has strengthened, we're now back into the red. So temperature is about 5 to 15 degrees above average. Today, looks like as we get into Saturday as well. So as things heat up, things dry out. And then if you get a lightning strike, let's say Saturday afternoon, because the fuels are dry, it becomes more likely that that lightning turns into an ignition. And I found this new chart this morning. It actually shows lightning ignition efficiency. So it's kind of a sciencey way of saying how likely is lightning to start a fire if it touches the ground. And our chart down here shows that green, not that likely. Orange, moderately likely. Red, you could say very likely to start a fire, or greater than 20%. So as we zoom in here, can't zoom in too much on this map, so we just sort of have to estimate where the fire is. But right there you see the orange. So much of the coast of California is in the yellow because that's where we get a lot more moisture. So if there's lightning there, not as big of a chance that a fire starts. But looks like close to where we have this fire, in part because of how hot it's been and how hot it's going to be today, it does look like we have a moderate potential for any lightning strikes that touch the ground to ignite new fires. So not trying to say that to scare anybody, but I'm saying that just because it is the truth of what's going to be happening in the forecast over the next few days. Not that it's going to happen, but there's a potential for it to happen. So I just want to give you guys as much information as I can. And then once we have the information, the rest of it's kind of out of our control, and we just have to sort of wait to see what happens. And that is what I'm going to be doing over the next few days. I'm going to be following this fire closely. I'll try to update you guys as well as I can. I am going to a wedding tomorrow afternoon, so I won't be able to do an update actually at the peak of when this lightning might be coming in. But we'll definitely try to do one tomorrow morning, because as these models have changed the last few days, it's certainly changed the forecast for the park fire. So who knows, may still change a bit tomorrow morning, so I'll have another update there. And if it looks like it's getting very active this afternoon, I'll most likely do a live stream then as well. So just the basic summary. Let's clean up this map. Here's our fire. It's only really been active on this northeastern section recently. That makes me concerned about mineral up here and some of these structures that we have on the northeastern side, but I do know they've been preparing those structures as well. The good news is they've been able to get a lot of work done on this fire recently, putting in dozer lines, contingency lines, and we do have, over 6,000 personnel on this fire, the most resources I've ever seen. So that's some of the good news. Some of the bad news is we do have that potential for lightning, and then we also have some challenges with the fact that there's a lot of fuel in this area that is exceptionally dry, and then we're also looking at the predominant wind direction coming from the southwest once again today. Now, it's not exactly the predominant winds that I'm especially worried about, though, because those still should just be around 15 miles per hour this afternoon, maybe some 18 mile per hour gusts, but it's more that when thunderstorms come through, they could bring some gusts up to 30 to 40 miles per hour, moving in all sorts of different directions. So if I had to say where I am when it comes to this fire, I would say in the absence of thunderstorms, I'm not too worried. I would say even today, since it doesn't look like there's as much of a thunderstorm potential today as what's going to happen tomorrow, I'm not too worried about this fire reaching all the way up to mineral today. I will, it's kind of hard to say though, because it's going to be hot and dry this afternoon. So it's hard to say how much more the fire picks up. But I would be surprised if it got up to mineral today. I would say the bigger question mark in the forecast is just how it's going to interact with the thunderstorms. And that looks to be of a larger potential tomorrow. So I think that's the best of a forecast I can do. Sorry, it's not more concrete, but yeah, when you have a forecast like this, you really just try to figure out what's going on, but then just watch as it unfolds. So again, I'll continue to try to give you guys the best information that I can. Hopefully this video was helpful, and thanks for watching.